A baby is dead after drowning in a bathtub. And now, months after the tragedy, his mother is thrown in jail charged in connection with his death. The case unfolded on October 31st when police responded to a home in West Des Moines, Iowa. According to court documents, 21-year-old Kayla Bevar called 911 saying when she woke up, she found her 20-month-old son floating in a tub of water. She told police that night she started her baby boy's bath around 6:30 and left the room while the drain was plugged and the water filled up the tub. She claimed she checked on her son while he was in the tub before she fell asleep, but later admitted to leaving her son for 5-minute increments unattended. She reportedly told police when she woke up she didn't hear splashing, and when she found her son, he was unconscious floating on his side as the tub overflowed. The baby was rushed to the hospital but later pronounced dead. Bevar was arrested months after her son's death, and last week she was charged with 2 felonies, child endangerment resulting in death and neglect or abandonment of a dependent person. But police say Bevar's drowning isn't the only evidence of negligence. According to court documents, Bevar's apartment was in a state of chaos as spoiled food and trash covered the floors. Diapers with exposed fecal matter were allegedly found in the bathroom. Police found no food in the apartment that was even suitable for a toddler, nor any clothes that would be considered safe or proper for a young child. It's a stark contrast from what was described in the baby's obituary. According to that obituary found online, Bevar's son was 20-month-old Waylon Jeffrey Bevar. According to the page, during his short 20 months on Earth, he touched many lives with his lovable nature and curious mind. Waylon loved dinosaurs and even dressed up as one to go trick-or-treating. He liked playing outside at the park, playing with the cat, and enjoyed peekaboo, as well as getting chased around when it was time to get changed and would giggle with every step. The obituary went on to say Waylon loved French fries, fruit snacks, or an Uncrustable with every meal. He would bring joy to every moment with his curly locks and big smile, or a sweet hug he shared with everyone he met. This is really just a heartbreaking case, and I want to bring on now attorney and former prosecutor Andrea Lewis. Andrea, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to get your overreaction or your reaction to this case overall. I mean, you have a young mom who essentially left her child to die in a bathtub. She didn't check in on the boy or even watch him while he was in the tub. Are you surprised something like this happened, and do you think it could have been preventable?
It's horrific. And as a mother, any mother, knows what is like the number one danger in a home. It's water safety. You got to have a pool protected. You have to have any type of enclosed water, such as a bathtub, a bucket of water outside, even. Why? Because children are defenseless. They can't fend for themselves. They don't know how to swim at such a young age. Half of them at this age can barely sit up. And so this is really tragic and it's absolutely preventable. And this mother, just based on her own admission, sounds like this was not the first time that this had happened, which is even more heartbreaking.
And do you think age had a factor in all of this? Do you think that she was just maybe a young mom that was overwhelmed? Because I can't seem to grasp why, like, a child, 20 months old, is left in a tub full of water by themselves.
It just defies common sense. You could easily, if you were tired or you had other things going on, give the baby a quick bath, get it out, put it in a crib. You could do a million things that would be far less risky or really eliminate the risk than leave your child in a bathtub with running water at that. I mean, that in and of itself is frankly idiotic because you know that what happens when you leave the water running, it continues to rise. So you have a situation here where the danger is going to be increasing to the child, and you've excused yourself to another room. And in this case, it sounds like laid down for a quick nap. While your child's in there taking a rest, I think you're probably right. Age played, I'm sure, played a role, but boy, this is just such a sad circumstance.
For sure. Why do you think the defendant was only charged with child endangerment resulting in death and negligence as opposed to murder?
Well, what normally happens in this type of a case is they're going to charge her with something, right? Because they want to take her in, they want to get her in custody. But generally speaking, then they really are doing an investigation. And if they found out that there were other circumstances where she was endangering the child or there was any type of intent, right? Many times during their investigation, they find searches on the internet that leads to something that's a far darker than just negligence. If that were the case, they would just upgrade the charges. But at least at this early stage, based on what they have now, they know they can support these negligent type claims. And then if they uncover evidence of something worse, they can always increase the charges at a later date.
Yeah, and according to police, the apartment where they lived was pretty much covered in filth. But then on the young baby's obituary, it kind of painted a different picture, one where the boy was happy and loved running around. Then you see the police report, and that wasn't necessarily the case. What do you make of those stark differences from kind of making it seem like this young boy was living a fulfilled life? He had food at home, shelter, clothing. But then, according to the police report, the apartment was covered in filth. There were diapers everywhere. There weren't even any clothes suitable for the young boy to be wearing. What do you just make of those differences?
It's anybody's guess. The first thing that comes to mind is with the mother taken into custody, it was probably another family member that wrote the obituary. And of course, as people naturally do, they paint a very rosy picture of the person's life. And they may not know, or they may just not want to say in something like that what the true conditions were. But either way, it's a very, very sad case. Here we don't know what type of resources were available to the mother, if this was a money issue, or if she, like you said, was just young, inexperienced, and had absolutely no idea how to take care of a child. Even then, I mean, it's hard to imagine a circumstance where you would have such little knowledge, or at least the ability to get that knowledge, that something like this would happen.
And why do you think Kayla wasn't arrested right away, especially since it was a drowning case?
A lot of times it's just they want to get the medical examiner's input on, was it definitely a drowning? In other words, is if the child had a toxicology report or something like that that showed fentanyl in the child's system, then there would be an investigation. Okay, was this a drug related death before the child was placed in the tub? I mean, those types of things happen. So it takes time to get the medical examiner's of ultimate opinions, to get those toxicology tests back, and then to eliminate one by one potential causes of death. In this case, it sounds like then definitively determining that it was in fact a drowning. But either way, it's absolutely horrific, and it's hard to imagine putting a child in danger that's that serious and obvious.
Yeah, and I just can't even imagine, just again, just the horrific nature of this. And since the defendant wasn't charged with murder, are you surprised her bond was set at $1 million?
Well, that shows you what the judge thinks of the case and the evidence against her. That's always the fear, is that is there a risk of flight here? Is there and we don't know these circumstances. Does she have family out of state or out of the country? I would go out on a limb and assume she doesn't have a lot of means, but I don't know that. And the judge is going to look at all of those different factors and determine what the bond should be. But in this case, it sounds like the judge weighed heavily on the significance of the potential charges, or at least the charge that we know that she was charged with, and that it resulted in a young child's death, and just said, absolutely not. We're going to keep you in custody.
Do you think it's possible those charges could be upgraded to murder maybe down the line?
Yeah, depending on what the investigation comes out with. I mean, if what we've heard is what is all that there is that she was, let's say, very tired, couldn't keep her eyes open, and was a young mom who didn't have a lot of help and or resources, and that she made this decision. Very bad. Certainly deserves to be punished, and severely at that. But is that going to result in a murder conviction? No, probably not, or murder charges, because murder, you really have to look at the person's intent, and the prosecutor's got to be able to show there's a higher threshold there in terms of what the person was intending to do. Here, do we think that she was intending to kill her child? Based on what we know so far, it doesn't indicate that. This looks like just absolute egregious negligence.
And what's it like putting up a negligence case up in front of a jury? Do you even see this case going to trial?
Many times they don't. It's something like this. I mean, you can certainly see a world where she just says, "Look, enough. I did what I did. I don't want to go to jail for the rest of my life, but I certainly deserve some type of punishment." Many times, as a strategy, what will happen, especially if she has no criminal record and there is nothing else, no other factors that we're unaware of at this early stage that are aggravating factors, no intent, no past harm of the child despite the obvious really poor living conditions, which maybe we'll learn more about that as the case develops. But in those circumstances, there can be some benefits to a defendant resolving the case early, or accepting a plea, or even pleading up to the court. Sometimes courts will take pity on them and say, look, you didn't make the case go prove an otherwise very obvious case of criminal neglect here of a child. And so for that, we're not going to slam you with the maximum sentence. We'll give you something less. Only time will tell in terms of whether she will actually go that route.
And in your opinion, how long is she looking at as far as jail time if she's convicted or if she ends up pleading guilty to these charges?
That is largely going to depend on her prior criminal record. So what happens there is that if the person has little to no criminal record, let's assume they have no criminal record for argument's sake, then many times the range that they're looking at is going to depend on the charges and how heavy of a weight that they carry in sentencing. But you can have a circumstance where a person can be charged with a felony and only receive a probationary sentence. Now, the judge does have discretion to go beyond that, but it's going to depend on the ultimate charges that they end up charging her with. Is this going to be it, or are they going to be increased? And two, her prior criminal record. And then, of course, both sides will have the opportunity to present mitigating factors or aggravating factors of why this should be considered more serious or less serious to be determinative of the ultimate sentence. And then, generally speaking, the prosecutors will utilize something called score sheets, which are just like it sounds. It's a numerical sheet where you plug in prior criminal record, what sentence or what level felony that the person is pleading guilty to, and it spits out a number of the recommended time frame that it is determined that the court should sentence the person to prison.
Well, a lot to unpack here. And as you had just mentioned before, too, the case is still traveling through the court system right now. So I'm sure down the line we'll learn a lot more. Andrea, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Before we sign you off, though, is there anything else overall about this case that you would like to add?
No, my heart breaks for the young child. I mean, I have two young children of my own, and it's hard to fathom doing something like that to any young, helpless, boy or girl. So it's certainly a very sad case, and we hope that other mothers, even those that are overwhelmed and inexperienced and young, learn from it.
All right, Andrea, thank you so much again for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Kayla Bevar made her first court appearance last week where a judge set her bail at $1 million. She is currently being held at the Polk County Jail. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.